So, there's a good chance you have this on your nightstand. Millions of us do, and we're pretty confident we know what it is and what it does. But, the real story behind melatonin is way more surprising than you might think. So, let's dive in. Okay, so what if I told you that most of our common ideas about melatonin are, well, just plain wrong, especially if you're over 50? The way most people use it can be totally ineffective, and worse, it can even introduce some unnecessary risks. And that really gets to the heart of it. It's time we stop thinking about melatonin as some simple sleep vitamin you can pop whenever. We need to start seeing it for what it is, a very specialized tool that's meant for a very specific job. All right, first things first. Let's tackle the biggest myth of all, the one you see everywhere in the supplement aisle, this idea that when it comes to melatonin, more is always better. You know what I'm talking about, right? You've seen those bottles, practically shouting at you with huge doses, 5, 10, sometimes even 20 milligrams. The thinking is, hey, a bigger number must mean better, stronger sleep. Yeah, but here's the thing. The science tells a completely different story. For most people, and especially for older adults, these massive doses just flood your system with way more of the hormone than it needs for sleep. And that just ramps up the risk of side effects. And we're not just talking about minor stuff here. We're talking about that awful next-day grogginess that feels like a hangover, headaches, even really vivid nightmares. And for adults over 55, the dizziness that a high dose can cause could lead to a really dangerous fall. That 10 milligram pill might be causing way more problems than it's solving. So the big question is, why? Why are these huge doses so unnecessary? Well, the answer is hiding in how our bodies actually make and use melatonin. And this, right here, is the scientific aha moment that changes absolutely everything. To really get this, we've got to go back to basics. We all know the name, of course, but what is melatonin really? Like, what are we actually putting into our bodies when we take that pill? Okay, this is so important. Melatonin is a hormone. It's a powerful chemical messenger your body makes to regulate all sorts of complex systems. It is not a vitamin, and treating it like one, that's the fundamental mistake so many of us make. And this is where it gets absolutely fascinating. Your body has two totally separate melatonin factories. Get this. The first is a tiny little gland in your brain called the pineal gland. It makes only about 5% of your total melatonin, and it does that when it gets dark outside to signal, hey, it's bedtime. But the other 95%, the vast majority, is made inside your cells, in the mitochondria. And that's triggered by sunlight, and its main job is to act like a powerful antioxidant, protecting those cells. Okay, let's just let that sink in for a minute. Just look at this split. A staggering 95% of the melatonin your body makes has nothing to do with sleep. It's all about cellular protection. The part that actually makes you feel sleepy, it's just that tiny little 5% sliver. So here's a really easy way to remember this. Think of the 5% for sleep as your body's thermostat. It doesn't create the heat, it just signals when it's time to power down for the night. The other 95% is like your body's internal security system, working around the clock to fight off damage and inflammation. Two completely different jobs, all from one hormone. Okay, so now that we know there are two different types of melatonin doing two different jobs, how do we actually use it the right way? This brings us to a simple, evidence-based guide for using it correctly. See, the whole goal when you take a melatonin supplement for sleep is just to mimic that tiny 5% thermostat signal. All you're trying to do is gently tell your brain, hey, it's nighttime. You are not trying to overwhelm your body's entire cellular security system. So how much do you actually need to flip that switch? The answer is probably going to shock you. For most adults over 55, the scientifically supported dose is just 0.5 milligram to 1 milligram. That's up to 20 times less than those 10 milligram pills we see everywhere. So let's walk through the actual science-backed protocol. First, you start low, just 0.5 to 1 milligram, or if you're using a prolonged release version, 2 milligrams is the sweet spot. Second, you have to time it right. Take it 1 to 2 hours before you actually want to be asleep. Third, you've got to test it. Give it a fair shot for 2 or 3 weeks. And finally, and this is the big one, if it's not working, that is your cue to talk to a doctor, not to just take more. All right, this brings us to maybe the most important part of this whole conversation, the red flags. These are the signs that it's time to stop trying to figure this out on your own and go talk to your doctor. Listen up, because if you take one thing away from all of this, let it be this. If you feel like you need a high dose, like 5 or 10 milligrams, every single night just to get to sleep, that is a major red flag. It's a huge sign that the melatonin isn't really the solution. It's probably just covering up the real underlying problem, things like sleep apnea or anxiety or even chronic pain.
So, when is it an absolute, non negotiable, you gotta call your doctor situation? Well, if you're using those high doses every night or for longer than 3 months. Also, if you have pre existing conditions like heart disease or you're on medications like blood thinners. And of course, if you're experiencing scary side effects like dizziness or falls, please take that seriously. That is a clear signal to get medical advice.
Look, it really just boils down to this. Don't use a supplement to hide from a potential health issue that needs your attention. Be proactive. Your sleep or lack thereof might be trying to tell you something really important. A doctor can help you figure out what that message is. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about tonight. Is your trouble with sleep just a simple issue with your body's thermostat, a simple timing problem? Or could it be a warning signal from your body's security system, a sign that something bigger, something else, needs your attention?